welcome to another session on the slate. We are here today with Robert Ulrich, who's part of an all-star casting team who, if I listed all of his work, we would be here for the whole hour just doing that. So I'm not going to do that. We're going to talk a little bit about one of his recent projects, and then we're going to get into some advice and some Q&A. For the Q&A, importantly, there is a Q&A box function at the bottom of your screen, and that's how you should ask questions. If you ask questions in the chat, we will not see them. So make sure you use the Q&A box. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about one of his recent projects, Amazon's The Boys, which is a really fun, funny, but also emotional and show that takes on some big themes, you know, through a very entertaining method. So let's start with that, and then we'll get into some advice and maybe touch on some of your other projects, since, like I mentioned, there are quite a lot. So to kick it off, talk a little bit about how you got involved in the project in the first place, and in general, how that is the same or different from how you get attached to other projects that you're involved in.
The Boys was offered to me because Eric Kripke's the showrunner, and I also do Supernatural with Eric Kripke. So he has been a wonderful, generous friend all these years. And so he called and offered it to me. So that's how I got that. First of all, let me tell people, I have no voice. I haven't had a voice for almost 5 years. It's a whole thing, but it's some days it's worse, some days it's better. I think it's worse lately because I'm on the phone, I think, more during this pandemic than I am at work. We generally, you know, it varies. I mean, I get direct offers quite often to cast, but not always. I'm doing a show called Zoeys Extraordinary Playlist, and I interviewed for that job. So I don't always get offered, but so that's how it works.
So a little bit like an actor, occasionally you have to do a version of an audition for a job.
Yes, which are always very, very strange because unlike an actor who's coming in and at least doing something, I mean, in a casting person, you just kind of have to sit there and go, you know, I've done this. It's just weird. I feel weird about it every time. And luckily, those interviews have diminished over the years because they certainly haven't gotten easier. They've gotten harder, I think.
That's interesting. Okay, so back to The Boys. There's a lot going on. There are superhero elements, there are regular human elements, there are some non-super but very strong people, and then there's a huge cast. So can you talk a little bit about assembling that and what considerations you had to make for all the different elements that went into it, and yeah, just that whole process? What were auditions like?
Well, the Boys was a huge undertaking. And again, I can't say enough good about the showrunner, Eric Kripke, who I think he made the entire process wonderful and fun. He has incredible taste. And I forget the question. How did we do it? So, I mean, going into it, it was a big challenge because also we had to initially cast the 6 superheroes who had costumes because Translucent didn't have a costume. We had to do that right off the bat because it takes 3 months to make each of those costumes. They're very expensive and a lot of care went into them. So we started with that. It was, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but more than any show I've ever worked on, we saw 10,000 people for The Boys. Almost 1,000 people per role, which is crazy. And we did lots and lots of in-office auditions, lots of auditions for Eric Kripke at his office. But we also did a lot of casting by tape, which I think is going to be the the way the future looks, to be honest. And I have a note here that I made so I wouldn't forget. Anthony Starr, Jesse Usher, and Tomar Capone, they were all cast directly off tape. They didn't come in to audition for anyone. And Anthony did 2 auditions on tape because he was on location somewhere. And the first one, just the quality, I mean, his acting was amazing, but the quality of the tape wasn't quite up to what they wanted. So, yes, we did a lot by tape. So
I think especially given the current times, that's very encouraging for people.
No, it really is. I mean, it really, and I'm just looking at my little notes here. Yeah, and we made just a few offers, really. All the rest were auditions. So it was wonderful. It was great.
10,000 people.
That was a lot of people. Just for the pilot, just for the series regulars. And then the show, as it went along, the cast directors in Canada are incredible, but we ended up sending a lot of people from America, more, I think, than we do usually. So no, it was a full out casting job from beginning to end,
So when you have a project like that, I know that Supernatural also filmed in Canada. I don't know if it's in the same part of Canada, but when you have a project like that where you're working with another team on location, how do you work together? And what's kind of you sort of just said there's more American actors than you would normally have sent. So like, what is the division of?
Well, it depends. Like Supernatural, we would obviously send people throughout the years, but we didn't send, we would many episodes, send no one. We might audition them and they ended up going out of Canada. No, the Canadian cast directors play a big role in this. Big role. Just one sec, I keep going to my phone to, not being rude, let me just see here, sorry. Typing this to my boys' team, telling them to watch, or I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Sec. Sorry. Because I'm doing it fast, I'm typing the wrong words right and left.
It'd be great for them to know that you're talking about how the sausage gets made a little bit.
Exactly. One last thing. Very, 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 very last. How's everybody doing during the pandemic? It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we'll get to that a little bit after, but I am curious how it's been for you, especially because I know a lot of things in general before all this happened were already kind of moving towards the self-tape aspect of things, and there was a lot more casting being done that way. But
yeah, it was already getting, sorry. Done. How many people are listening to this?
There's 1,008 right now.
No way. Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. Say your last question. I'm sorry.
Well, I do want to get to self-tapes later, but I want to stay on the show for now, and then we can use that as a transition because
Translucent was also a self-tape. Alex Hassel from England. Those are people we never met. People didn't meet till they got on the set. It's crazy.
That is crazy. So
that is very encouraging.
Yeah, and you kind of, you mentioned before that one of the self-tapes, the acting was amazing, but maybe the quality of the self-tape wasn't exactly, what does that mean?
Well, I think anybody that knows me knows that I don't have very many rules or things that I'm not a cast director who things have to be this way. I mean, basically, maybe because I was an actor, actors can do no wrong around me, or so I've never had like, don't do this, don't touch, don't, of course everything's gonna be different now. So I don't really care about the quality of the self-tape, but if the self-tape gets sent on to people, the quality is super important, because studios and networks do pay attention to the quality. And there is something kind of crazy, and I'm not saying for people to go out and spend a ton of money on doing incredible self-tapes, but there is something about when a self-tape looks beautiful in comparison to when a self-tape looks terrible, the people automatically seem better, just because you're kind of drawn into the quality of everything. Really, my main notes on self-tapes are definitely get a body shot from a distance, but then the rest of it should be about this close, or maybe chest up, because sometimes people send self-tapes where they're literally this big on the screen. You can't see them. Make sure the sound is good. That's an issue. That's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, because most actors, I'm assuming, aren't self-taping for the first time right now, but it's obviously the way that things are happening, and probably will continue happening
For a long time.
Yeah, possibly indefinitely, because now people can see quite how much they could do.
Well, I've never been, a lot of casting people were very against self-tapes. I have not been against them. I mean, you do lose the inter-office connection, which in the olden days used to be really important, because the director would actually be in the room and the producers would be in the room and people that were actually making the decisions would be there. But it's not like that anymore. Generally, if you're doing an in-office audition, it's with the casting person, because usually, not always, but usually the producers or everybody are somewhere else. And you still lose the cast director telling you, no, they want this, or it should be this way. And that's huge, because casting suddenly becomes about the choice you make, because you're not there to find out what people really want. But the positive side of it is, if we were doing in-office auditions, you generally bring about 6 or 7 people per role. I've brought up to 12, and that's kind of overkill, because the producers don't want to see that many generally. And so you're limited to the number of people that are given the opportunity. Whereas on a self-tape, we'd see 1,000 people, and we might send a couple hundred people, because you could send 25 at a time and they'd have time to, and with self-tapes, there are the people that don't do my wife always said she gave great room, but there are really good actors that don't do that, that aren't good at being in the room. And also in the room, you might get the opportunity to do it once, where you can do it as many times as you want and make it the way you want it on self-tape. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
How do you feel about if people have kind of 2 ideas or 2 takes on a part, or from the sides that they read, and there aren't instructions to do it a specific way, someone sending more than 1 take on,
that's fine. You never know whether anybody will watch more than 1 tape, and more than 1 take, and they probably won't, but they might. And so again, that's part of the that's part of the power the actor has, and they don't have a lot of power. That's part of the control that they have. And so if they wanted to do it twice, more power to them, or do it 2 different ways.
And I also, correct me if I'm wrong, it's an opportunity too to see people from, near and far. And I don't know if you've had this experience, that you possibly maybe cast someone from the UK or Australia when maybe you wouldn't have?
Oh, you mean the self-tape situation?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's how Translucent was from England, and Frenchie was from Israel. I mean, those are tapes that came from other countries, and that happens more and more. It's so become a global world as far as casting. I mean, it was not like that in the past at all. So if you are somebody who lives somewhere else, just make sure your working papers in order. And even if you are an American actor, make sure your passport's in order, because I have had actors lose guest star roles because the passports weren't ready, and then we have to recast it immediately. And that's happened more often than you would think.
Yeah, that would be, I imagine, a huge blow to get a role and then not be able to do it because of logistics.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious, the show, you know, we have so many references now for things that are superhero related, but this show is a little bit different. And I'm wondering if, especially for those superhero roles, but then there's other action roles that weren't super. I'm wondering if casting wise you had more flexibility because it was a little bit, you were looking for something maybe a little bit cheekier, a little bit different in those characters than what we've seen in other superhero projects.
Yes, and you know, we were still looking for people that could, for the superheroes, physically believably be superheroes. I mean, they had to, you know, look a certain way, be in certain shape enough, because they are still superheroes. But this is so much more than a superhero show to me. And I know many people that don't like superheroes at all, and superhero shows, and they love the show. This show is such a comment on society and fame, and I mean, it has so many themes that are so well explored that I just loved reading the scripts. You know, when we've done a lot of shows, and there have only been a handful that I have been so excited to get the next script, and The Boys is one of those. I think the writing is so good. Everything about the show is really good. I mean, it's and again, I'm giving credit to Eric Kripke, because when you have a leader who wants everything perfect and won't settle for anything unless it's perfect, the whole show has that. And I do Zoeys Extraordinary Playlist, same thing with Austin Winsberg, and same thing with Ryan Murphy. When you have somebody that overlooks something and they have great taste and they want every element, the hair, makeup, sets, costumes, you know, everything perfect. That's what I think The Boys is, you know, looks like.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of your projects you work with really talented creators.
Very lucky. That's just luck. I think maybe people that are listening to this are contacting me. I don't know. Oh yeah, because they took a picture of it.
On social media.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that, so a lot of those projects probably require actors to be able to do a little bit of everything, some comedy.
Oh yeah.
Some of the shows,
this show
music.
This show, The Boys, is obviously very dark, but it has a lot of comedy too. It's a great mixture of drama and humor. Oh, I was saying, yeah, I am absolutely, my company is lucky, so lucky that we've just gotten good shows. I mean, you're only as good as the people you're working for and the material you have. That's just the truth. So we've just been fortunate for many years to have gotten things that are good and that people want to do, and that's just been our, you know, it's been luck and a blessing, really.
So because you do so many projects, what made this project different from, you know, maybe a Zoeys Extraordinary Playlist or one of your Ryan Murphy projects, and what were some of the unique challenges that came with it too?
Well, this project like those, we get, we do a lot of work, and a lot of it you don't even see because they're pilots that never go. We can spend so much time and energy, and it's always crazy to me that those things never even get seen. So, but the ones you just mentioned, the boys like Zoe and like Ryan stuff, they're very unique, and so there's an immediate, when I read the script of the boys, I was just filled with excitement because it was different. It was not only good, but it was different. So good, but it was different. And I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
And because you mentioned that, you knew the showrunner because you've been working with him. It's we know that you've been working with Ryan Murphy for a long time. You have these long collaborations. What about someone's work? What gets you attracted to a project in the first place? And then what about, those experiences make you want to keep working with someone?
Well, generally at this stage of my career, what attracts me to a project is the people, because when you're, especially a pilot, but when you're working, it's really hard, and it's all consuming. It becomes your life. And so, it can be the hardest thing in the world and the most challenging, but if the people are nice, it's suddenly not so hard. It's suddenly more fun, and then as far as, if you really like somebody, you want to keep working with them, and it's just, you hope that they like you and want to keep working with you, because that's kind of out of our hands as casting directors. If we want to keep working with somebody, it's up to the showrunners, so, friendships develop, and you have these with your showrunners, with agents, with managers. You have this strange relationship where you may not see any of them ever, or only at award shows, or only, and yet you share the most intimate moments of your life because you've developed these phone relationships or email relationships, which are really deep, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things about the job, is that I feel like I have all these wonderful relationships in this industry, and so many with people that I never see or rarely see.
And before we start to take some audience questions, you mentioned how you started out as an actor, and that has definitely informed some of your lack of restrictions in your audition room and the way you like auditioning or to see auditions. So what are some other ways that your experience as an actor have then informed, your work as a casting director?
Well, I think in every way, and it's like, and that's not to say neither of my business partners, who are extraordinary, neither of them were actors. So you don't have to be an actor to be a casting director in any way. And we are all three married to actors. So I think that has greatly informed our office, because we've made a concentrated effort to make our office one in which people feel safe, and that's because we're all married actors. But as far as me being an actor, or having been an actor, I get it, and I think that the whole process of auditioning, especially coming into in-person auditions, is ridiculous, but it's the only one we have, because there are people who are incredible auditioners who that might be all you get, and there are people who fall apart, especially at in-room auditions, who are really wonderful actors, so I think it's a strange thing that we ask people to wait for 2 hours, come in, to a room where everybody's in a hurry to get out, be vulnerable. It's just a strange system, the whole thing. So to answer your question, me having been an actor makes me, I think, extremely sensitive to that, to that part of it, how hard it is. And how, I mean, not that I was a great actor, because I wasn't. I always said I was a really great classroom actor, but I could not do the audition thing. And, I'm very sympathetic to how hard it is to put yourself out there. I did not have that. I'm so confident as a casting director, and I did not have that as an actor. Yeah.
Was there anything that you learned or that surprised you once you switched places and you started casting after you had spent years kind of?
I don't know specifically, but I do know that I always say the first day I was on this side of it, I think I learned more about acting than the entire time I'd been in class or working, on stage, anything. And you do really, one thing I think that's interesting is acting is all subjective. There's no right or wrong. There's, the person working in the grocery store's opinion is every bit as valid as the person running the studio. But the person running the studio's opinion is the one making the decisions, But it's a completely subjective world. And oh shoot, I completely lost my train of thought. That was an important thing, but I'll think about it later. I can't remember what I was going to say.
What you learned about acting once you switch places.
Oh,
I trust that it will come back.
Just that it's, that it's interesting how, even though it's so subjective, you can bring in 4 or 5 people or producers, or just an intern or a friend to watch auditions. They can watch hundreds of auditions and generally gravitate toward the same 2 or 3 people. I do find that fascinating. And that's, and I've been in rooms when people used to actually discuss in the room many times, or not many times, but a few times, where people would be passionate about one person, half of them would be passionate about another person, and the third person would get the job. So, I think that actors, the main thing you have to do that I was not good at is have the confidence in yourself and try as hard as you can once you're done with the audition to put it behind you and not replay it in your brain a million times what you could have done. Because the decision making is so out of your control, and you could have given the best audition of your life and not get the job, or given an audition that you don't think is very good and get the job. There's no, rhyme or reason to any of it. But you should be prepared always.
Yeah, and on that note, we're gonna go to some reader questions. There are people sending in questions now. As a reminder, use the Q&A box. If you put the questions into the chat, we will not see them. And some people sent some in advance. And one of the ones that I really liked that someone sent in advance, they were asking how your experience casting is different on a musical show like Glee or Zoeys Extraordinary Playlist versus a non-musical show, and should they approach the room differently for 2 different projects besides the basic talent needed?
Yeah, that's good. Those are good questions. It's very different when we are casting, because we all, we've done those. We did productions of, just for fun, I did a bunch of productions in Greece and Canada. We did Rocky Horror Picture Show. I love musicals. I love musicals. And so for me, when I have an opportunity to do a musical, it's like the greatest thing in the world. And I kind of came up with the system of how I do it, or I came up with the system of how I do it on a musical that never went, which was for NBC called Rhapsody, which was a Sean Cassidy project, which was incredible. And this is before people were doing musicals on TV and everything. So I kind of figured out how I like to do it. And I figured that having a pianist in the room was really important, because it helps singers who aren't as strong, and it makes strong singers better. And that's how I actually met Brad Ellis, who I brought on to Glee as the pianist, who ended up on the show, did every season of Glee as the pianist. But it's completely different. we've even had dancing involved. We've had dancing auditions all through Glee. We did dancing auditions. My assistants and associates would teach the dance routine, Alana and Rory, and they would, it was crazy. We had people tapping on we brought a little plastic thing. But it's a completely different way to structure the audition process. And when we would go to Studio Network with Glee, we had a piano in the network, and in those days, you'd go live to network, and it was going to network was such a scary thing, and just having a piano in the room made it all less scary. It was like being at a cocktail party, But an actor preparing, other than they have to prepare singing and sometimes dancing, I don't think there's anything different. I think that you just are always trying to approach whatever the thing is the most truthfully, the most prepared that you possibly can. And in that way, I don't think there's any difference between whether you're going in for a drama, a musical. It makes no difference. You just want it to be very truthful, even no matter how big the character is. That was one thing about Glee. The situations were so heightened, but for the most part, 99% of the characters played everything very real in the most crazy of situations. And that's why I think people became so attached to them and blah, blah, blah. So.
Yeah. And going off of that, another question that was asked a few times was there are theater actors who are trying to break into film and TV, or they're trained as theater actors, so they don't really have training for on-camera acting. Yeah. Someone asked, is it inappropriate to do a stage monologue in a audition for a TV, a self-tape, or, if someone wants to see more than just the sides? And someone else just asked, what are the differences? What should they know about transitioning from one medium to another?
Yeah. Well, I think you would never do a monologue or anything extra unless somebody asked for something extra. And then if they asked for something extra, great, do whatever. That's tough because, again, I think that the best, and I love theater too. I think that I was lucky enough to go to New York 3 times right before the pandemic and I saw 10 shows. It was so wonderful. But I still think that the best theater actors are still playing it for true. Yes, there's a slight difference, which has become less and less with everything mic'd. In the old days when you had to, project over you had to project so much, it was different, but now everything's mic'd. And so certain things are heightened because you're playing to the back of the house. But on Zoey, we've cast people that are straight off of Broadway who hadn't done, I don't think, any film or television. And I think you just as guest stars, you just adapt. I don't really know. That's a hard question because I get what they're saying. But I guess if you're playing a really big character on stage, yes, you should bring it down for a camera. And I think that my fellow cast actors might disagree with me because they might say there's a big difference and that you should really bring it down. But again, I think it's just about playing the truth, no matter how big the character is, because there are big people in real life, but they're real,
And I know this is a question a lot of people are anxious to hear the answer to. There's a lot of people who are just starting out, maybe don't have a lot of credits on their belt. I read an interview that you did that you said it was fun to, discover someone or kind of pull someone out of nowhere. What is the likelihood of that happening in all reality? And where might you look if you have to look outside of what your agents are sending you to find someone new?
Well, first of all, with episodic television, you generally don't have the time, because everything is so fast, to look outside of agent submissions and your knowledge and history and everything. But doing a pilot, you have more opportunity. It again, I think it depends on the project. If the role, if the on Glee, where we were looking for people who could sing and dance and were young, and I knew that Ryan is the kind of creator who is open to, I mean, he's very specific in what he wants, and yet he thinks outside the box. And he's open to, if you bring him people that are outside the box, always, you know. On a show like that, we were dealing with Actors Access, we were reading, and Chris Colfer had, I don't think he'd ever been on camera. I mean, he was he just graduated from high school. His father drove him from Clovis in Central California. And I know on the Glee Project, which I did, we were open to people who had never done anything. And we used a lot of Actors Access. I just finished a wonderful Amblin Spielberg. It's the Untitled, what's the final title? Like Untitled Spielberg Film Reenactment Project. And in that, I was looking for 3 kids, or 14-year-olds. And, you know, we were investigating all over, and we were looking for, we looked through Actors Access. We went to schools, the whole shebang, you know. When I did a series that's going to be on called Tiny Pretty Things for Netflix, which is really cool. And that's a kind of a murder mystery in a ballet school. And in that case, they wanted the dancing was the most important. It was more important than anything. And the dance that these kids had to do, the ballet combination, was so difficult. I mean, crazy. So we ended up with people that were literally people who could be in ballet companies, and some were. And so I guess what I'm saying is, if it's a specific thing, like a ballet dancer, a young person, a singer, then I think that that we look everywhere, and it doesn't matter the experience. And I've luckily been fortunate to do a lot of those kinds of shows. The older you get, it is very difficult if you have no experience in anything. It is honestly a lot harder.
That makes sense.
Does that answer?
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to some of the teens, this is kind of a weird question, but someone did ask, are you more likely to cast someone who's an adult that looks younger, because that might be a little bit easier with, you know, there's a lot of rules, and is that?
Well, sometimes, I mean, you are, it depends on the show, and you're given different instructions per the show with the age that they're looking for and the hour restrictions. On the Spielberg one, we didn't have any restrictions. On Glee, we had no restrictions. You know, we were looking young, and they didn't care. You know, they just wanted the best person. So, but there have been the shows where, you know, it's very important to have, because you get so many hours depending on the age break, you know, for the role. But I've been fortunate to work on a lot of things that age hasn't been an issue. And yes, absolutely. You said you read that interview. For me, by far the most fun thing in the business is giving somebody a break. And generally that's somebody young, but occasionally it could be somebody that's, you know, been around forever, and you finally see them getting their big break, and that's so rewarding, you know.
Yeah.
On Zoey, Michael Thomas Grant plays Leaf. He's one of the workers in the office, and that was super exciting because he's somebody who I found on the Glee Project season 2 search. And each season we would narrow down, 50,000 people to 500 and then eventually to 80. And those 80 would get flown to Los Angeles and have like a boot camp. And then it would get narrowed down to obviously the 12 the first season, 14 the second season that were on the show. Michael was in the top 80. And that was and I thought he was so talented. And I'd watched him through the years do all these, they do these For the Record show, their live shows in LA that have been so good. And Michael has done a lot of those. He has one of the most extraordinary voices I've ever heard. And so to see him get cast in this was so much fun because Zoe's really his break because, he hadn't broken into film and television yet. So that was really exciting, actually.
So that answers the question. If someone auditions for you and impresses you, you will remember them and years later, but you will still give them a job years.
Yes. Michael's was 7 years later or something. Yeah. I forget how long the Glee Project's been off, but yeah, absolutely. You can hear me, can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, but I can hear you.
Yeah.
And someone else sent in actually a really great question. They asked in an audition if they're auditioning with a scene partner after they've prepared and made certain choices for their character, but the scene partner kind of is going a different direction. Do you want them to let go of their idea of the scene and the character and play it off of what the reader or the scene partner is doing? Or
you mean if they're in an office? That would be if they're in an office, not at home. If they're boy, that's tough because acting is obviously reacting and yet a lot of times in an office you're not reading with. We have really good readers. When I had a voice, I might not have been the best actor. I was an incredible reader, but you don't always get great readers. Quite often, I hear from my actor friends you don't. That I don't know. I mean, I think that you have to assess every situation differently. If it looks like, if you're reading with the casting director and they're a good reader, they're probably doing it the way it should be done. So then, yes, you should probably kind of adjust to how they're doing it. If you're just reading with a reader and they're not very good, I don't know, that's hard. I think you just try to do it the way you'd be doing it if you were doing it to an offstage reader on a show, I guess. Yeah.
In those instances, be confident with your choice.
And be confident with your choice, yeah. Just one sec. Tierney? 1 second. Tierney? Can you just grab me some water? Sorry, I asked my daughter to get me some more to drink.
No worries. Someone is asking talk about the audition process for Zoeys with the musical element. You sort of did a little bit of that, but I guess for that specific.
Yes, on Zoey, we started off with, let me just sing for a sec. We started off having a pianist. I think Brad did a lot of Zoeys, I think. And oh, thanks so much. And we, what I would always do with Glee, Zoey, Rocky Horror, I'd always schedule auditions with the pianist before the audition, because anybody that sings knows that so much of the time you have to figure out the key, you have to get the sheet, and that way they have a chance to try out different songs. Oh yeah, we had a pianist for sure. Now they think about it on Zoey. And it saves time in front of the producers, because we had our producers in the room and Austin for most of Zoey's auditions, almost all of them. And so they have a chance to get it down so you're not wasting their time. Plus the people are just going to be better because they're going to know, they don't have to walk in and say, oh, I have these two songs, that kind of thing. So we always did it that way. Yeah. And then with a piano.
And someone asked a question I also always like to ask when I talk to casting directors.
As Zoe's gone along with a lot of the guest auditions, we've done it just with either a cappella or they can bring a guitar or a track. But during the pilot, it was all with piano. Sorry.
So much musical talent.
Yeah, there's so much talent.
And yeah, so a question I always like to ask someone else asked, what is one thing you wish actors knew about what you do?
That's interesting. I don't really, not I don't care or wish that they knew what I do, but the casting is, not to say poor me because I'm so lucky, it's really hard. It's not just, and for me, the fun part is all the auditions, and the not fun part is all the paperwork and rules and regulations and all that kind of stuff. It's just not fun for me. Like, I think my business partner, Eric, loves all the negotiation, all that. That's not the part I like. I like the creative part, not the business part. But there's a lot to the business part, that I think people don't realize. There's, it's a lot of work. And I think that the social media or the, now that everything's by tape and all that, I don't think it's necessarily made it easier. I think it's made it, the volume has increased, so much.
Someone asked, how long does it take to go through 10,000 auditions?
A long time. And we go through every audition and every single submission. And, if you release a guy or a girl in their mid-20s, within minutes, we might have 4,000 submissions. I mean, it's really daunting. And that's why in episodic television, which is what we mainly do, the pace is so fast that it isn't always the most conducive to anyone involved. It's just fast,
Yeah. And someone else about the 10,000 wanted to know, when you are looking at that many, I know there's not like a distinct answer to this question, but what are some things that make you make someone stand out while you're seeing people do the same sides?
That's that impossible question, that it's like, what it's that it factor, that spark, that you initially are drawn. First of all, do they look like the way you envisioned in the role? And then that quality, and then I think the audition, because I think, it's just that thing, they pop on the screen, and then something about some people make you, why are there movie stars? Why are they the people that you just want to watch? So I don't think that you can really, people can't try to have that thing. They just have it, and they have to just try to be truthful and do their job, really. Tell the story.
Yeah. And we're getting towards the end of our time, and I know that this is on a lot of people's minds. There's been a few questions about this. I don't know how much work you've been doing. I don't want you to get into any sort of projects you can't talk about at all.
I mean, we are dead.
But people are curious, what do you think the casting and things are going to look like going forward? And do you,
I don't know. I mean, no one knows. That's the, if people knew. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm first of all waiting to see if Zoe gets picked up, and I'm waiting to see officially if the boys because we've already done season 2 of The Boys, which is so incredible. I mean, incredible. But we're waiting on that, both those, and then my office has had a lot of stuff picked up this week. But so I don't know when things are I mean, I'm hoping that we're back in the office by July or August. I hope. I know there's talk of things shooting September, October, but nothing is set in stone, I don't think, or I haven't heard, you know. I had just cast that pilot, which was so good, the Spielberg pilot, and we had just flown the actors to Atlanta. We all went to Warner Brothers to sit and watch the table read. And it was just, you know, like some of the people had a mask, you know, it was just, and then by the end of that day, the actors were flown home, and the next day was my last day at work. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think it's pretty safe to say what it's going to look like for actors is self-tapes, you know, so either set up something in your room, or, you know, you will be get one of those ring lights, you know, like I think I said at the beginning of this, my wife got me one, or got us one, because she did a Zoom call for Passions yesterday. And we didn't set it up yet. So, but now there's so many of these kind of things that, you know,
Yeah.
we will. This is the first time I've been in a t-shirt and shorts for 2 months, and I've had like 4 Zoom calls. And in the Zoom calls is the only time I put a shirt on, and I even put shoes on, because there's something about just feeling like dressed, you know, you want to be, I don't know, it's
like
a weird time.
Casual Friday today.
But I do know that it will get better. I mean, I'm not somebody, I guarantee, you know, I'm old, and I've been through, you know, a lot of things that would make you think that the show business is going to come to an end, and it's not. I mean, you know, during the Depression, people went to movies more than ever when they had no money. I mean, there will always be the need for entertainment, and we will figure out a way, Matt. Like I think I said maybe to you before, one of my sons, a DP, he's doing a commercial today, but he's having to do it with no crew. He and his wife, I mean, there's no crew. So it's a ton of work for him. But there'll be a lot of changes in rules and regulations. And then, you know, some of it will go back to normal eventually, some of it won't, but it'll be the new normal, you know. But people shouldn't be discouraged. I mean, we're all discouraged because no one has any work or money, or, you know, and that's all. My heart goes out to everybody, but you shouldn't be discouraged as an actor about there being no future, because there will be, you know.
Yeah, I think right now is a good time to practice and get good at your self-taping.
It really is. It's a good time, I think, to, you know, I always say with actors, when I meet an actor, and I love actors, and most of my friends are actors, and I think that when I meet somebody for the first time, I generally don't talk about acting. As obsessed as I am with acting and movies, and the most obsessed person in the world, I like to get to know them as a person. So I think it's a great time for people to either develop another hobby, or just do things to make them so they'll be more interesting as an actor when they begin acting again, and to work on the art of self-taping.
And since I think we have time for one more question, someone sent a really nice question for you, which is, what is your proudest moment as a casting director?
That's a good one. I've been so proud. Well, 2 things. The Glee Project was my favorite thing I ever worked on, because I was, you know, as a casting director, people go, "You just did on that show what you do as a cast director." I said, "No, as a cast director, somebody gets the job. They usually find out from their agent. You're not there to go through their sadness if they lose it, or their happiness if they get it." On the Glee Project, they did that every week. So I got very attached to all those kids, and very proud of them, you know, just so proud of all of them. And then when the ones that won, Samuel and Damien, and basically Lindsay and Alex Newell, and then Blake, and basically Eileen and Ali Stroker, those seeing them go on to do things has brought me enormous pride. When I saw Blake and Cyrano in New York, I was full of pride. When Allie won the Tony, I was bursting with pride because Allie Stroker, first of all, was the first person in a wheelchair to ever be on Broadway when she'd done Spring Awakening. And then when she won the Tony, she was obviously the first person. That was probably one of the most proud moments. And another moment is that, I've told this before, but I'd cast Chris Colfer. I love Chris Colfer. But he's not somebody I hung out with or anything like that. And the Glee Project was starting the next morning in Long Beach. So I decided to not go to any of the Golden Globe parties or anything because I had to be up at 5 a.m. And so I was watching TV with my son Cooper, my wife Kim, and my daughter Tierney. We're watching the Golden Globes. Suddenly Chris Colfer wins and he thanks Ryan Murphy and me. It wasn't a laundry list. And I yelled and cried and everybody cried and screamed and immediately my phone was ringing off the wall because as a casting director, you rarely get thanked, ever. And if you are, it's usually in a laundry list. And I ran upstairs, put my tux on, zoomed over to the Golden Globe parties. I'm like, I am not a screw, me being tired for the Glee Project tomorrow. And so that was an incredibly proud moment and just exciting moment because, I was getting worldwide recognition from someone who I love, but wasn't a close friend, So that was pretty amazing.
That's definitely something that I've started to notice as I have now been interviewing casting directors for a few years, is whenever someone mentions that in a speech, it's very rare, but it's always very
Oh, it is hardly ever. And I think it's because, and again, I have so many friends who are actors, people often look as the casting director as the obstacle instead of the way to get you in. And obviously I have cast people throughout the years that I wasn't as instrumental in them getting cast, and then other ones that absolutely they would not have been cast if I had not either really pushed for them or not just giving them the break, but there's so much pushing that a cast director does for somebody. So yeah, but they are usually, because it's just human nature, you move on to the producers who are the people that are now you're working with, and you forget about the cast directors. So that one last moment. Last year, Eric and Carol and I won this Life Achievement Award. It was super exciting, and Ryan Murphy and Carol Mendelsohn presented it to us at the Beverly Hilton with 1,400 people there, and it was wonderful. And as a surprise, Amber Riley and Darren Criss, both people I feel very proud of and very instrumental in their success. I mean, in getting in the first break. They did a musical tribute to us, and that was pretty cool. Because again, you rarely get that kind of recognition. So that was very fun.
Yes, not to make it about me, but I was actually there. So
were you really?
Yeah.
Wasn't that just the best?
Yes.
Wasn't that they were? I mean, Amber. Well, they were both amazing. Obviously, Darren's spectacular, but when she did that big number, and she just said such sweet things. But they're both wonderful. I'm so proud of them both. And yeah, I'm very lucky to have helped people who are nice people. I'm very, very lucky. And I'm just basically lucky that I ended up in a job, when I left acting, and acting had left me far long before, but that I fell into a job that suits me so well, because I always tell people that, I mean, obviously, if you want to be an actor, you have to have that thing you want it more than anything. And I obviously didn't have that, but I had it about the business. And I always say, as an actor, you should be open, because there are so many jobs where, so many jobs, even down to the caterers, and that they feel such a part of the project, and so proud of it, that there's a lot of fulfillment. in other jobs that aren't just acting. And that's coming from somebody who wanted to be an actor more than anything, I thought. So, and I've been able to live vicariously through my wife, which has been wonderful. So.
Well, I think that is an excellent place to stop. You have so much experience that we could go on for probably days, but I will not keep you that long. Thank you so much, Robert, for doing this and taking your time and sharing your great advice.
Well, thank everybody for tuning in. How many people tuned in?
There are still, let me see, there are still about 900 people in the room an hour later. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. You can catch Robert's work all over television, The Boys, Zoeys Extraordinary Playlist, most of Ryan Murphy's projects. Supernatural's done now, but I think it's on Netflix. But yeah, so thank you again, and everyone stay healthy, enjoy your weekends, and
well, thank you so much for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.